Hey everybody, this is Perch, and a few of you have written in asking me what kind of impact the SVG bank collapse will have on comics. And the short answer to that is pretty much none, at least not in any kind of short term. Comic companies were not invested in Silicon Valley Bank. I don't know. There's possibly a couple of smaller ones were, but very, very unlikely. And the reality is, unless you are of the belief that this is the tipping point of massive bank failures, a la kind of 2008, it's unlikely. And from what it looks like, again, I'm overseas here, but from what it looks like, certainly, it feels like a somewhat localized event. There were plenty of people who saw this coming to a large extent, and so it's hard to believe this topples into more. Now, it definitely has the possibility, and I think the indicators of it toppling into something more are the fact that a lot of the news spread on Twitter, people start pulling their money out faster than ever, and I think the indication was that if this happens again, or as we look at things like bank failures and sudden moments, we need to understand that social media is going to play a pretty big role in things moving perhaps faster in our ability to control them. So that's, the run on the banks occurred largely because of social media at the speed it did. So normally, there's a run on banks, news travels, people start pulling their money out, government steps in, puts in some controls. That's what a lot of those things are for. And, things can kind of be captured. I'll get to comics again here in a second, but two other points in all this. I do think, and again, this is going to wander into politics, but here goes. I think the current administration has absolutely jack all of an understanding of what to do in these cases. I think that either it's willful ignorance or there is a desire to kind of tank some of the banks in order to, consolidate power. And you should understand that administrations, there is who benefits from a bank failing like this? Usually the really rich. That's just a fact. They tend to have their money diversified. They have it in other places. They have it insured. There's lots of reasons why flushing out cash with some of the smaller guys helps the people on top. I mean, that's a fact. Life happens with all administrations. This administration seems either particularly clueless about new technology, which is kind of weird, given that was a lot of Biden's pitch, that he was going to be able to handle new technology a lot better because he had younger people, etc. Who knows? But it hasn't really felt that way. It's felt a lot more like it's a lot of the same old kind of dumb people trying to consolidate power. This, again, I understand, as political as it gets, that's kind of where that sits. But the major reason why the SVG Bank failed is for some of the same exact reasons why I suggest comic shops need to diversify their output. When I say diversify, I know that's a triggering word for some, but what I mean there is just you're selling more than just new comics. In this case, Silicon Valley Bank was heavily invested in tech. And that's stupid. I mean, for any bank, being that leveraged into one sector means if that one sector has issues, then you're going to be hit, harder than most. It's the exact same principle why comic shops shouldn't be completely reliant on New Books or Funko. And the Silicon Valley Bank was definitely a bank of choice for a lot of tech startups, a lot of companies, and for a while, actually, during some of the tech boom in kind of early 2000s, if you were a startup in Pac Northwest or Silicon Valley, you were heavily encouraged to use Silicon Valley Bank because it was, in theory, better for you, smarter. Now, ironically, part of its death came as a result of not understanding how fast social media would topple it, but that's some karma for you. Anyway, so unlikely, very unlikely that it happens. Anything happens with comics as a result of all this. Other than, and this is kind of a kooky little idea of mine. So if you start seeing banks and kind of some of the vehicles from the tech industry and industries that heavily hire people in their 20s, 30s start to collapse, you see some of the money go out of it, the impact of comics might be interesting because my theory, now granted I have a comic shop for years up in Seattle, and so that's going to, the clientele is going to be, very much tech related. But all of the whales who would come in and buy what I always considered to be the poorest investments, $100 variant covers and so on, those people were always from tech. Those people were typically, mid 20s, early 30s, had a little bit more money and knew what to do with, had a big, paycheck from Facebook or Amazon or Google or Microsoft, and they tended to buy that stuff. If suddenly, paychecks hurt, we're seeing tech layoffs, we're seeing other things in that industry, it may have an impact on comics in the sense that some of that easy money for stupid stuff, particularly novelty kind of geek stuff, which does index a lot higher in tech, might start to weaken. And if that starts to weaken to some extent, maybe, we'll see people have to focus on stories and cut back on their line a little bit. It'd be horrible. It'd be horrible, I tell you. Anyway, that's kind of the piece that may impact there. I mean, I don't know. Silicon Valley Bank for the last 3 years has been one of those places like, ooh, don't keep your money there. Honestly, that's been the word on the street. I don't have any money there. I never had any money there, but I have consulted for companies that did. And there were aspects of it that always felt like, the management wasn't all there. One of the things that's being said a lot right now, I think Ron DeSantis is pushing it, Nikki Haley a little bit, is that this is a result of ESG craziness, that the Silicon Valley Bank was encouraging companies to invest in woke and so on. That's not really the nature. That's not really how that bank works, nor how ESGs work in terms of the bank, like calling up people who are putting their money there and going, hey, you should do this. Nor was its board council, I mean, at its level where it was investing in tech, going, hey, we need to invest in, we need to worry about these ESG things. Not really how that system operates. I know it's fun to say, and it's probably a great political talking point, but it's not exactly the case here. This is an investment portfolio. This is a bank. Yes, I understand they do investments in Lynn, but not like what, not like big investment firms like you're talking about. But one other thing to consider, because people are pointing out, it's like, hey, look, a lot of the companies that were in on this tended to be left-leaning, and it's like, here's this. I'm going to reveal to you a major secret, that carefully guarded for centuries. Turns out, tech startups and tech companies in California, Seattle, and Portland tend to lean left. It's weird. I know this is groundbreaking, shocking news, but it turns out that the vast majority of companies that had their money in this bank in the tech sector were left-leaning, have been left-leaning, were left-leaning long before they even took a single dollar out of that bank. So, is it the bank pushing this kind of stuff, or is it the clientele they had? Yeah, it's that second one. Now, I mean, certainly Silicon Valley Bank also had management and people in that same area. And again, I know this may shock you, but California tends to lean left in politics. It is this crazy thing. We know this because of every vote that's been taken for a long time now. I mean, we live in a time where everything has to be traced back to the politics of today, but the reality is it's been this way for quite some time. So I wouldn't draw too much, from that conclusion, unless your conclusion is that, hey, people who are, in their 20s and 30s, tech bros, who, have a vague understanding of politics, but invest in social clauses, maybe those people get separated from their money due to poor strategies. In which case, I would agree with that. I don't think, again, that's that controversial statement. Turns out people early in their career with too much money in their hands often don't know what to do with it properly, and they make poor choices. It's a crazy thing. Tomorrow, tune in for breaking news like college bros who, go down to Mexico for vacation, drink more than they should. That's going to be tomorrow's breaking story. Anyway, there you go. Silicon Valley Bank, impact comics? Probably not, but it is an interesting story and a lot of interesting history to watch. Thanks for listening.